The artificial lights of Helios Station cast long shadows across the marble floors as Ambassador David Reed adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time. 3 years of careful negotiations had led to this moment. The Krenth Empire, known throughout the galaxy for their warrior culture and aggressive expansion, had finally agreed to peace talks with humanity. Reed had spent months learning their customs, their language, and their complex honor codes. Everything depended on these next few days. Reed walked through the station's main corridor, passing representatives from dozens of alien species. The Helios Station served as neutral ground for the galaxy's most important diplomatic meetings. Its massive viewing windows showed the swirling storms of the gas giant below, a reminder that even in this age of space travel, nature remained more powerful than any empire. The Krenth had chosen this location specifically, claiming it represented the balance they sought with humanity. The Krenth delegation waited in the Grand Conference Hall. Reed had met their leader, General Vorth, several times through video communications, but seeing him in person was different. Vorth stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled skin gleaming under the station's lights. His 4 arms were crossed in what Reed had learned was a gesture of cautious respect among the Krenth people. Behind him, 6 other Krenth officials formed, a perfect line, their military discipline obvious in every movement. Reed approached the traditional greeting circle marked on the floor. According to Krenth custom, both parties would meet in the center and exchange ritual words of peace. He had practiced this moment countless times with his cultural advisors back on Earth. The future of human expansion into the Outer Rim systems depended on establishing good relations with the Krenth Empire. Their territory blocked 3 major trade routes that humanity desperately needed. General Vorth stepped forward, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. Reed noticed the intricate patterns carved into the alien's armor, each mark representing a battle won or an enemy defeated. The Krenth valued strength above all else, but they also respected those who could match their intellectual prowess. Reed hoped his years of preparation would prove sufficient. The greeting ceremony began with ancient words spoken in the Krenth language. Reed responded with the appropriate phrases, his pronunciation carefully practiced. Vorth's eyes showed what might have been approval as Reed completed the ritual without error. The other Krenth officials made soft sounds that Reed recognized as expressions of interest. So far, everything proceeded according to plan. The formal negotiations took place over the next 2 days. Reed found himself impressed by the Krenth's knowledge of human history and culture. They asked detailed questions about Earth's past wars, particularly focusing on humanity's capacity for strategic thinking. Vorth seemed especially interested in ancient military leaders like Alexander the Great and Napoleon Bonaparte. Reed answered honestly, explaining how humanity had evolved beyond its warlike past to become a peaceful, exploration-focused civilization. Vorth and his advisors exchanged glances that Reed interpreted as satisfaction with his responses. The Yaoi Krenth had a reputation for testing their diplomatic partners, probing for weaknesses or hidden agendas. Reed felt confident that his straightforward approach had passed their tests. By the end of the 2nd day, they had reached preliminary agreements on trade routes, territorial boundaries, and mutual defense pacts. The 3rd day brought what Vorth called the ceremony of lasting peace. This ancient Krenth ritual involved sharing a meal prepared according to their oldest traditions. Reed had been briefed on this possibility and understood its significance. Among the Krenth, eating together created bonds that were considered sacred and unbreakable. Accepting the invitation meant both parties were committed to honoring their agreements. The ceremony took place in a smaller chamber decorated with Krenth battle banners and human diplomatic flags. Reed felt honored by the respect shown to humanity's symbols. The meal itself consisted of various dishes that his medical team had cleared as safe for human consumption. The Krenth had even prepared several items using ingredients imported from Earth, another gesture of goodwill. Vorth raised a ceremonial cup filled with a traditional Krenth beverage. The liquid glowed with a soft blue light, indicating the presence of minerals common on Krenth worlds. Reed had been warned that the drink would taste strange to human palates but was completely harmless. Cultural exchange required such sacrifices, and Reed had experienced far worse during his diplomatic career. The taste was indeed unusual, with a metallic aftertaste that lingered on Reed's tongue. Vorth and the other Krenth officials watched him carefully as he drank, their expressions showing what Reed interpreted as approval. The ceremony continued with speeches about the bright future that awaited both species now that peace had been established. As the evening progressed, Reed began to feel unwell. At first, he attributed it to exhaustion from the intensive negotiations. The symptoms seemed minor: a slight headache, some dizziness, and a growing sense of fatigue. The Krenth officials appeared concerned when Reed mentioned his discomfort, immediately calling for medical assistance from the station's health center. The station's medical team arrived quickly, but their scans revealed something troubling. Reed's nervous system showed signs of systematic shutdown, consistent with exposure to a rare neurotoxin. The symptoms were progressing rapidly, and despite their best efforts, the medical staff could do nothing to reverse the process. Reed realized, with growing horror, that he had been poisoned during the ceremony he had thought would seal the peace between their peoples. General Vorth stood beside Reed's medical bed, his expression unreadable. The other Krenth officials maintained their perfect military formation, showing no emotion as Reed's condition deteriorated. Through the fog of approaching death, Reed heard Vorth speaking into a communication device, broadcasting something in the Krenth language to his homeworld. Reed's final moments were filled with the bitter understanding that everything had been a trap. The Krenth had never intended to negotiate in good faith. They had studied humanity's diplomatic nature and concluded that humans were weak, suitable only for conquest or elimination. His death would serve as their proof that peaceful species had no place in a galaxy ruled by strength. The poison worked slowly, giving Reed time to contemplate the consequences of his murder. Back on Earth, his death would be seen as the ultimate betrayal of diplomatic trust. Humanity had sent its best negotiator in good faith, only to watch him die as entertainment for their enemies. Reed knew his people well enough to understand that this act would awaken something in humanity that had been sleeping since their early wars on Earth. The Krenth had made a terrible mistake in assuming that peaceful meant weak. The emergency session of the Earth Congress convened at dawn, 3 days after Ambassador Reed's death reached the homeworld. President Maria Santos stood before the assembled representatives, her face carved from stone as she read the intelligence reports aloud. The Krenth had not only murdered their ambassador, but had broadcast the entire poisoning ceremony to their empire as propaganda, celebrating the weakness of humanity's diplomatic approach. The intercepted transmissions painted a clear picture of Krenth intentions. General Vorth had described humans as soft creatures who send talkers instead of warriors, claiming that Reed's death proved humanity unworthy of galactic respect. Worse yet, intelligence suggested that the entire 3-year negotiation process had been an elaborate study of human psychology and military capabilities, designed to identify weaknesses for future conquest. Senator Patricia Williams from the Mars colony demanded immediate military action. The Outer Rim settlements had reported increased Krenth scout activity along their borders since Reed's murder. It seemed the aliens had interpreted Earth's diplomatic outreach as confirmation of human cowardice rather than strength. Williams argued that every day of inaction invited further aggression from species throughout the galaxy, who might see humanity as an easy target. General Robert Hayes, head of the Joint Defense Command, presented classified intelligence that shocked even the senior congressional leaders. The Krenth Empire had been quietly building invasion fleets for the past 18 months, while publicly engaging in peace talks. Their military buildup included weapons specifically designed to counter known human defensive technologies. The negotiations had provided them with detailed scans of human ships and equipment, intelligence they were now sharing with potential allies. President Santos called for a classified session, clearing the chamber of all but the most senior officials and military commanders. What she revealed in that closed meeting would later be called the moment humanity's true nature emerged from centuries of diplomatic restraint. Earth's government had been maintaining secret military projects since first contact with alien civilizations, understanding that peaceful intentions meant nothing without the strength to back them up. The Prometheus project had been developing advanced warships in hidden facilities throughout the solar system for over a decade. Unlike the exploration vessels and light defensive craft known to the galactic community, these ships were designed for one purpose: total warfare. Their existence had been kept secret to avoid alarming Earth's neighbors and to maintain humanity's reputation as a peaceful species focused on exploration and trade. Admiral Rebecca Torres, previously known only as head of deep space exploration, revealed her true role as commander of humanity's hidden warfleet. The woman who had supposedly spent her career mapping distant star systems had actually been overseeing the construction and training of the most advanced military force humanity had ever created. Her ships incorporated technology reverse-engineered from every alien species humanity had encountered, combined with innovations that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The decision came swiftly and unanimously. Earth would respond to Reed's murder not with diplomatic protests or economic sanctions, but with the full unleashing of humanity's military potential. The Krenth Empire had made the fatal error of assuming that humans were inherently peaceful rather than choosing to be peaceful. They were about to learn the difference between those two concepts. President Santos addressed the nation that evening, her words carried to every human settlement throughout known space. She spoke of Ambassador Reed's years of service, his dedication to peaceful resolution of conflicts, and the hope he had represented for a galaxy where differences could be settled through dialogue rather than warfare. Then her voice hardened as she described the Krenth betrayal and their celebration of human weakness. The president's next words would be remembered as the declaration that ended humanity's age of diplomacy. Earth would no longer seek peaceful solutions with species that responded to goodwill with treachery. The murder of one diplomat had revealed the true nature of galactic politics, where strength alone commanded respect. Humanity would adapt to this reality and ensure that no human representative would ever again die helpless and alone at an alien conference table. The response from human colonies throughout space was immediate and overwhelming. Recruitment centers found themselves flooded with volunteers eager to avenge Reed's death. The Outer Rim settlements, which had lived under constant threat of alien aggression, finally saw hope for real security. Earth's industrial capacity began shifting toward military production on a scale not seen since the ancient world wars. Admiral Torres began moving her hidden fleets into position within days of the president's declaration. The Krenth had made their territories known through their aggressive expansion, giving human intelligence detailed maps of their military installations and supply lines. What the aliens didn't know was that human exploration ships had been quietly surveying their space for years, cataloging defensive positions and identifying strategic weaknesses. The Krenth response to Earth's mobilization was predictable. General Vorth broadcast new messages throughout his empire, mocking humanity's desperate posturing, and promising that their fleet would crush any human resistance within weeks. He displayed Reed's personal effects as trophies, and announced plans to demand tribute from all human colonies within Krenth territorial claims. What Vorth and his military commanders failed to understand was that they were no longer facing the humanity that had sought peaceful coexistence through diplomatic channels. Reed's murder had awakened something that had been deliberately kept dormant since humanity's early expansion into space. Every human settlement had been built by people willing to leave everything behind to face unknown dangers. Every colony had survived by learning to defend itself against hostile environments and aggressive alien fauna. The Krenth had studied humanity's diplomatic history, but ignored its military heritage. They knew about Earth's ancient wars but dismissed them as primitive conflicts irrelevant to modern space combat. They had observed human exploration ships but never suspected the existence of purpose-built warships hidden throughout human space. Most critically, they had mistaken humanity's preference for negotiation as evidence of an inability to fight. Within 2 weeks of Reed's death, the first Prometheus fleet ships began appearing at the edges of Krenth space. These vessels bore no resemblance to the exploration craft and merchant ships the galaxy associated with humanity. They moved with predatory efficiency, their advanced sensors mapping Krenth defensive positions while remaining invisible to alien detection systems. The Krenth military command initially dismissed reports of unknown ships in their territory as sensor ghosts or equipment malfunctions. By the time they understood what they were facing, Admiral Torres had positioned her fleet for the opening strikes of what would become known as the Reed War. The Krenth had wanted to test human resolve through the murder of a diplomat. They, We're about to discover that some tests have consequences far beyond what the test giver expects. General Vorth's final broadcast before the shooting began showed him standing in his command center, surrounded by displays showing the locations of Krenth fleets throughout their empire. He spoke confidently about the coming conflict, predicting that human forces would break and scatter after facing real military opposition. His words were being transmitted to Earth even as the first human weapons locked onto their targets. The age of human diplomacy was ending, and the Krenth were about to become the first species to experience what that truly meant. The first strike came without warning at precisely 0347 hours, Krenth Standard Time. The Vorthak Defense Station, considered the most heavily fortified military installation in the Empire, simply vanished from all sensors in a flash of brilliant, white light. Admiral Torres watched the strike from the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution, as her experimental weapons proved their worth against alien defensive systems that had seemed impregnable. The technology behind the attack had been developed in secret research facilities hidden within asteroid mining operations throughout human space. While the galaxy knew humanity for its peaceful exploration vessels, those same ships had been quietly collecting data on every alien defensive system they encountered. The information gathered during decades of diplomatic missions had been fed into military research programs that the galactic community never suspected existed. Torres activated the fleet-wide communication system, her voice reaching every human warship now emerging from stealth positions throughout Krenth space. Her orders were simple and direct. Disable all military installations, capture all advanced technology, and ensure that no Krenth force could threaten human territory again. The gloves were off, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of when diplomacy failed. The Krenth response was swift but confused. General Vorth attempted to rally his scattered forces, but human ships seemed to appear from nowhere, striking with weapons that ignored shields and penetrated armor that had never been breached. The Empire's military doctrine was based on direct confrontation between massive battleships, a strategy that proved useless against enemies who could phase in and out of normal space at will. The human fleet employed tactics that combined ancient Earth military strategies with technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Ships would appear behind Krenth formations, deliver devastating attacks, and vanish before return fire could be targeted. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to engage according to established rules of space warfare, using methods that seemed to violate the basic principles of combat they understood. Captain Susan Mitchell commanded the stealth destroyer Shadowhawk, one of 12 ships tasked with eliminating Krenth communication networks. Her vessel could phase partially out of normal space, allowing it to pass through enemy shields and deliver strikes directly to vital systems. The technology had been reverse-engineered from artifacts recovered from a dozen different species, refined through years of secret testing in the outer system research stations. Mitchell's first target was the primary communication hub for the Krenth Second Fleet, a massive installation that coordinated military operations across 3 star systems. The Shadowhawk materialized inside the station's main command center, its weapons already charging. The Krenth officers barely had time to register the impossible sight before their entire facility was reduced to expanding plasma. Similar strikes were occurring throughout Krenth space as humanity revealed the true extent of their military capabilities. The Vengeance under Captain David Park demonstrated another piece of hidden human technology by taking direct control of Krenth automated defense systems. The ship's advanced computer warfare suite, developed from captured alien AI systems, turned the Empire's own weapons against their operators. The psychological impact of these attacks proved as devastating as their physical effects. The Krenth had built their entire culture around the concept of honorable combat between equals, facing their enemies directly and winning through superior strength and tactics. Human warfare ignored these concepts entirely, striking from impossible angles with weapons that seemed to break the laws of physics. General Vorth's attempts to coordinate a defense were hampered by the systematic destruction of his communication networks. Human forces had clearly studied Krenth military organization for years, identifying critical nodes and eliminating them with surgical precision. Every time the Empire's forces tried to regroup, They found their command structure had been severed at exactly the right points to maximize confusion and prevent effective response. The third day of the conflict brought an even more shocking revelation about human capabilities. The research vessel Prometheus, commanded by Dr. Sarah Chen, revealed that years of peaceful scientific missions had been gathering intelligence for military applications. The ship's advanced laboratories had been analyzing alien technology and biology, developing weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses of each species humanity might face. Dr. Chen's contribution to the war effort was a series of targeted viruses that could shut down Krenth computer systems while leaving human technology unaffected. These electronic weapons spread through the Empire's networks like wildfire, disabling everything from weapon systems to life support controls. The Krenth found themselves fighting with obsolete backup systems while their enemies operated at full technological capacity. The human assault revealed layers of preparation that spoke to decades of careful planning. Supply depots hidden in supposedly empty asteroid fields provided fuel and ammunition for the advancing fleets. Automated manufacturing facilities, disguised as mining operations, began producing advanced weapons and equipment on demand. The peaceful exploration that had defined humanity's galactic presence had been concealing a military infrastructure of stunning scope and sophistication. Admiral Torres coordinated the multi-pronged attack from her command ship, using quantum communication systems to maintain instant contact with forces spread across multiple star systems. The technology allowed human commanders to respond to changing battlefield conditions faster than their enemies could adapt, creating a decisive advantage that compounded with each passing hour. The Krenth military leadership finally began to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation as reports flooded in from across their empire. This was not the desperate strike of a weak species trying to avenge a murdered diplomat. This was the systematic dismantling of their entire military structure by an enemy that had been preparing for this possibility since first contact. General Vorth's final communication to the Krenth High Command painted a grim picture of humanity's true nature. The species that had spent decades negotiating peaceful settlements and avoiding military confrontations had been hiding capabilities that surpassed anything in known space. Their diplomatic missions had been intelligence-gathering operations. Their peaceful exploration had been strategic reconnaissance. Their reluctance to fight had been a choice, not a limitation. The fourth day brought the assault on Krenth Prime, the Empire's homeworld and the seat of their military power. Admiral Torres personally led this attack, bringing her most advanced ships against the planet's orbital defenses. The battle lasted only 6 hours, with human forces systematically eliminating every military installation while leaving civilian infrastructure intact. The fall of Krenth Prime sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Other species that had viewed humanity as a minor power, focused on peaceful exploration, suddenly found themselves reassessing every interaction they had ever had with human representatives. How many of their own military secrets had been quietly catalogued during friendly diplomatic visits? What other capabilities might humanity be hiding? Torres stood on the bridge of the Retribution as her forces took control of the last Krenth military facility. The empire that had murdered Ambassador Reed no longer existed as a military threat. Their fleets were destroyed, their command structure was shattered, and their homeworld was under human occupation. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for peace was matched only by their capacity for total war. The message that went out to all known species was simple and direct. Humanity remained committed to peaceful coexistence with any species willing to honor diplomatic agreements and respect human sovereignty. However, the murder of Ambassador Reed had demonstrated that some entities in the galaxy only understood strength. For those species, humanity was prepared to speak in the only language they comprehended. The Reed War, as historians would later name it, lasted exactly 17 days from first strike to final surrender. In that brief time, humanity had transformed from a respected but minor galactic power into the dominant military force in known space. The peaceful explorers and skilled diplomats remained, but they now carried the implicit threat of overwhelming force behind every negotiation. 6 months after the fall of Krenth Prime, the galaxy discovered that humanity's capacity for warfare extended far beyond the destruction of a single empire. The Thex Confederation, longtime allies of the Krenth, made the fatal mistake of attempting to rescue their defeated partners through a coordinated assault on human supply lines. Their attack on the merchant vessel Terra Nova, carrying humanitarian aid to former Krenth colonies, triggered a response that redefined galactic understanding of human military doctrine. The Thex had spent generations building their reputation as master strategists capable of coordinating complex military operations across multiple star systems simultaneously. Their confederation included 17 different species, each contributing specialized capabilities to create what they considered an unbeatable military alliance. The destruction of the Krenth Empire had worried them enough to begin secret preparations for war against humanity, but they believed their superior numbers and experience would carry the day. Admiral Torres received word of the Terra Nova attack while meeting with former Krenth military leaders on the occupied world of Vortuk. The humanitarian mission had been attempting to deliver medical supplies to civilian populations devastated by the recent conflict. The Thex had specifically targeted this vessel to send a message that they would not tolerate human expansion into territory they considered their rightful sphere of influence. The response came not from Torres's fleet, but from an entirely different branch of human military capabilities. The Ghost Division, commanded by Colonel Frank Anderson, had been developing tactics for fighting multi-species alliances since the earliest days of human space exploration. Their ships were designed to exploit the communication difficulties and tactical disagreements that inevitably arose when different species tried to coordinate military operations. Anderson's first strike targeted the Thex command structure with weapons that had been specifically designed to counter their multi-species communication protocols. Human-computer warfare specialists had spent years studying how different alien species coordinated military operations, identifying the weak points where cultural differences created vulnerabilities. The attack severed communication between Thex member species at precisely the moments when coordination was most critical. The Riller, the primary military species within the Thex Confederation, found themselves cut off from their Volian intelligence specialists and their Hexan logistics coordinators. Each species began reverting to their individual military doctrines, creating chaos within the Confederation's carefully planned battle formations. Human forces exploited these gaps with surgical precision, turning the Alliance's greatest strength into its most crippling weakness. The psychological warfare component of the human response proved as devastating as the physical attacks. Broadcasting captured Krenth military records throughout Thex space. Human intelligence services revealed the true extent of the former Empire's military preparations against the Confederation. The evidence showed that the Krenth had been planning to betray their allies once humanity was defeated, intending to claim Thex territory for their expanding empire. The revelation split the Confederation as member species began questioning their commitment to rescuing allies who had been preparing to stab them in the back. The Volians withdrew their intelligence support, claiming they needed to protect their own territories from potential human retaliation. The Hexans suspended logistics operations, stating that they could no longer guarantee the loyalty of their partners. The carefully constructed alliance began collapsing from within. Captain Lisa Rodriguez commanded the experimental warship Nemesis, testing humanity's most advanced weapons against Thex defensive systems. Her ship carried prototype technology that could analyze enemy defenses in real time and automatically adapt human weapons to exploit any weaknesses discovered. The system had been designed to counter the Confederation's practice of combining different species' defensive technologies into supposedly impregnable fortifications. Rodriguez's assault on the Thex fortress world of Kelman demonstrated the futility of relying on static defenses against adaptive enemies. The Nemesis systematically tested different weapon configurations against the planet's shields, learning from each failed attack until it found the precise combination needed to penetrate their defenses. Within hours, the fortress that had protected Thex space for centuries was reduced to debris orbiting a defenseless world. The human advance through Thex territory revealed new aspects of their military philosophy that horrified other galactic powers. Unlike the Krenth, who had fought to maintain their empire until the bitter end, the Theks found themselves facing enemies who seemed more interested in conversion than conquest. Human forces offered captured alien personnel the opportunity to join their military, rather than face imprisonment or death. This recruitment strategy proved devastatingly effective as humans demonstrated their willingness to integrate alien expertise into their own forces. Former Theks officers found themselves commanding mixed-species units under human oversight, using their knowledge of Confederation tactics to accelerate the dismantling of their former alliance. The policy turned every captured enemy into a potential asset while denying those assets to the opposition. General Patricia Williams, who had been promoting military action since Reed's death, now found herself coordinating operations across 17 different star systems as human forces systematically eliminated Theks resistance. The Confederation's greatest strength, its diversity of member species, had become its critical weakness when faced with enemies capable of exploiting cultural and communication differences. The siege of Theks Central, the Confederation's governing world, lasted only 3 days despite its reputation as the most heavily defended planet in known space. Human forces used their new multi-species auxiliaries to approach the planet's defenses using proper Confederation protocols, gaining access to orbital installations before revealing their true nature. The deception allowed human Marines to capture the Confederation's leadership with minimal casualties on either side. The terms of Theks surrender included provisions that sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Rather than demanding tribute or territory, humanity required the Confederation to provide detailed intelligence on every military alliance and mutual defense pact in known space. The defeated aliens found themselves obligated to reveal the strategic relationships that had shaped galactic politics for centuries. This intelligence bonanza allowed humanity to identify potential threats long before they could organize against human interests. The network of alliances that had kept peace through balance of power suddenly became transparent to human military planners, who could now predict and counter any coalition before it formed. The galaxy's political structure, built on careful diplomatic relationships and secret military agreements, lay exposed to human analysis. The integration of former Theks military assets into human forces created a snowball effect that accelerated with each successful campaign. Each defeated enemy contributed personnel, technology, and intelligence that made human forces more capable of defeating the next target. The military machine that had emerged from Reed's death was not just growing larger, but becoming more sophisticated and adaptable with each victory. President Santos addressed the Galactic Council 6 months after the Theks surrender, speaking to an assembly that now viewed humanity with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. She explained that humanity's military expansion was a direct result of the hostile environment they had discovered after Reed's murder. Every species that chose confrontation over cooperation would face the same systematic dismantling that had befallen the Krenth and Theks. The president's speech marked the end of the galaxy's old political order. The careful balance of power that had prevented large-scale conflicts for centuries had been shattered by humanity's demonstration that overwhelming force could achieve in months what diplomacy had failed to accomplish in decades. The choice facing every species was simple: adapt to the new reality or become another example of what happened to those who chose otherwise. Admiral Torres stood before the combined fleet that now represented the military might of 3 former empires, all under human command. The ships bore the insignia of dozens of different species, but they answered to human commanders and fought according to human doctrine. The murdered Ambassador Reed had become the catalyst for the greatest military expansion in galactic history, transforming humanity from peaceful explorers into the dominant power in known space. The galaxy was learning that some species were naturally suited for diplomacy, while others excelled at commerce or exploration or scientific research. Humanity, it seemed, had found their true calling in the art of total warfare. The death of one diplomat had awakened a sleeping giant, and that giant was systematically reshaping the galaxy according to its own vision of order and security. 2 years had passed since Ambassador Reed's death, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the fragmented collection of competing empires and federations that had existed before. The Human Defense Concordat now encompassed 47 star systems, and included member species that had voluntarily placed themselves under human protection rather than risk becoming the next target of humanity's expanding military machine. The transformation had been as swift as it was complete. Where once dozens of different species had maintained separate military forces and competing territorial claims, there was now a unified structure under human leadership. The chaos of the old system, with its endless border disputes and resource conflicts, had been replaced by an ordered hierarchy that guaranteed security in exchange for compliance with human oversight. President Santos walked through the halls of New Geneva Station, the massive orbital facility that served as the capital of the Human Defense Concordat. The station had been built in the neutral zone that once separated human space from the former Krenth Empire, symbolizing humanity's emergence as the galaxy's dominant power. Representatives from dozens of species now worked together under human coordination, managing everything from trade disputes to scientific research projects. The Altarian delegation had arrived that morning to formally request membership in the Concordat, the latest in a series of species seeking human protection. Their homeworld sat near the border of what had once been Thek's space, and they had watched nervously as humanity systematically absorbed the former Confederation's member species. Ambassador Reed's death had taught the galaxy a harsh lesson about the consequences of underestimating human resolve. Admiral Torres commanded the Concordat Defense Force from her flagship, now renamed the Ambassador Reed, in honor of the Diplomat, whose murder had started humanity's rise to galactic dominance. The ship had been expanded and upgraded with technology from a dozen different species, representing the best that each member world could contribute to the common defense. The vessel had become a symbol of humanity's ability to forge unity from diversity through strength. The integration process had proven surprisingly smooth for most species willing to work within the human system. Unlike the empires of the past, which had ruled through fear and exploitation, humanity offered genuine partnership to species that demonstrated loyalty and competence. Former enemies found themselves elevated to positions of responsibility within the Concordat, provided they proved their commitment to the new order. Commander Vex, formerly a Thek's intelligence officer, now served as Torres's deputy commander, responsible for coordinating operations involving former Confederation forces. His appointment had shocked many observers who expected humans to treat defeated enemies with the same brutality that had characterized previous galactic conquests. Instead, humanity had demonstrated that they valued competence and loyalty over species origin. The economic transformation of the galaxy had been as dramatic as the military conquest. The old system of competing trade blocs and protective tariffs had been replaced by a single economic zone that allowed goods and services to flow freely between member worlds. The efficiency gains had produced unprecedented prosperity for species willing to participate in the human-led system. Dr. Helen Kim, formerly Earth's leading economist, now served as Director of Concordat Economic Development, overseeing trade relationships that spanned half the known galaxy. Her office received daily reports from member worlds showing production increases and living standard improvements that exceeded even the most optimistic projections from the pre-war period. The elimination of military competition had freed enormous resources for productive investment. The technological advancement accelerated by the Concordat's research-sharing agreements had produced innovations that would have taken centuries to develop under the old system. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers, combining different approaches to problems that had seemed unsolvable. The murder of one diplomat had inadvertently triggered the greatest period of scientific progress in galactic history. The Kelton Research Consortium, incorporating scientists from 12 different species, announced breakthrough developments in faster-than-light travel that would revolutionize galactic transportation. The project had been funded through resources that would have been wasted on military competition under the old system. Peace through strength had proven more productive than anyone had imagined possible. President Santos prepared for her address to the Concordat Assembly, representing species from across the galaxy who had chosen cooperation over confrontation. The speech would mark the second anniversary of Reed's death and formally establish the principles that would govern humanity's expanding sphere of influence. The document had been developed through consultation with member species, but the underlying philosophy remained distinctly human. The principles were simple and non-negotiable. Member species enjoyed full autonomy over their internal affairs, but surrendered control of military forces and foreign policy to human oversight. Trade and economic development would be coordinated through concordant institutions to maximize benefits for all participants. Most importantly, any species that chose aggression over diplomacy would face the full military might of the unified concordant forces. The memorial service for Ambassador Reed took place in the station's central plaza, attended by representatives from every member species of the growing concordat. The ceremony had become an annual reminder of the price of galactic instability and the benefits of unity under human leadership. Reed's sacrifice had been transformed from a diplomatic tragedy into the founding moment of a new galactic order. General Robert Hayes, now Supreme Commander of Concordat Military Forces, spoke at the memorial about the lessons learned from Reed's death. The galaxy had discovered that humanity's peaceful nature was a choice rather than a limitation, and that choice depended on the willingness of other species to respect diplomatic agreements and honor their commitments to non-aggression. The speed of humanity's transformation from peaceful explorers to galactic overlords had stunned observers throughout known space. Species that had dismissed humans as a minor power focused on scientific research suddenly found themselves facing the most sophisticated military machine the galaxy had ever seen. The revelation that humanity's exploration missions had been gathering intelligence for decades had forced a complete reassessment of human capabilities and intentions. The final component of the new order was the establishment of the Reed Institute, a diplomatic academy that trained representatives from all member species in the principles of peaceful conflict resolution. The facility was located on the former site of Krenth Prime's military academy, symbolizing the transformation of a warrior culture's capital into a center for peaceful cooperation. Ambassador Patricia Chen, Reed's former deputy, served as the Institute's first director, ensuring that future diplomats would be trained to recognize the warning signs that Reed had missed. The curriculum included extensive study of alien psychology and military capabilities, preparing graduates to negotiate from positions of informed strength rather than naive idealism. The transformation of the galaxy's political structure had created unprecedented stability, but it came at the cost of the independence that many species had cherished for millennia. The Concordat offered security and prosperity, but under terms that made human dominance absolute and permanent. Species that had once considered themselves equals to humanity now found themselves junior partners in an organization they had no real power to influence or leave. The resistance movements that emerged in the outer rim systems posed little real threat to Concordat stability, but they served as reminders that not everyone welcomed humanity's new order. These groups operated more as symbols of defiance than effective military forces, lacking the coordination and resources needed to challenge human military superiority. Their existence was tolerated as long as they avoided attacks on Concordat installations or personnel. Captain Michael Torres, the Admiral's younger brother, commanded the Concordat's peacekeeping forces responsible for monitoring resistance activity and preventing it from escalating into actual rebellion. His approach emphasized intelligence, gathering, and psychological operations rather than direct confrontation, reflecting humanity's evolution from reactive military responses to proactive conflict prevention. The economic benefits of Concordat membership had proven so substantial that even species with philosophical objections to human dominance found it difficult to justify remaining outside the system. The elimination of military expenditures had freed resources for infrastructure development and technological advancement that improved living standards across member worlds. Independence had become a luxury that few species could afford. The Zenthari Commonwealth had been the last major holdout against Concordat expansion, maintaining their neutrality through a combination of geographic isolation and careful diplomacy. However, their recent application for associate membership demonstrated that even the most independent species were beginning to recognize the futility of opposing humanity's new galactic order. Admiral Torres stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the latest addition to the Concordat Defense Force take its position in the formation. The vessel had been constructed using a hybrid design that incorporated the best engineering concepts from 7 different species, representing the technological synthesis that had become humanity's greatest strength. The ship bore human command authority, but reflected the collective knowledge of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The success of the Concordat system had begun attracting attention from species beyond the immediate galactic neighborhood. Long-range scouts reported contact with civilizations from distant spiral arms who were interested in establishing diplomatic relations with humanity's expanding organization. The death of one ambassador was rippling outward to affect species that had never heard of Earth or the Krenth Empire. President Santos concluded her anniversary address by reading from Ambassador Reed's final diplomatic report, transmitted just hours before his death. His words about the potential for peaceful coexistence between humans and Krenth served as a bitter reminder of opportunities lost to alien treachery. The report had become a foundational document for the Concordat, demonstrating both the value of diplomatic idealism and the necessity of military strength to back it up. The ceremony ended with the traditional moment of silence for Reed and all the diplomatic personnel who had died in service to galactic peace. The memorial wall now included names from dozens of species who had given their lives in the cause of peaceful coexistence, but Reed's name remained at the top as the catalyst for everything that followed. The galaxy that emerged from humanity's expansion bore the unmistakable stamp of human organizational principles and military efficiency. Where chaos and conflict had once dominated interspecies relations, there was now order and predictable justice. The price had been the independence of species that could not match human military capabilities, but the benefits had exceeded even humanity's most optimistic projections. Admiral Torres sealed Ambassador Reed's diplomatic medal in the memorial vault, alongside the artifacts from humanity's peaceful era that had ended with his death. The age of human diplomacy had given way to the age of human dominance, but the values that Reed had represented continued to influence how that dominance was exercised. His death had taught humanity that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of overwhelming strength in the hands of those committed to justice. The Human Defense Concordat represented the galaxy's new reality. A single species had proven capable of imposing order on the chaos that had characterized interstellar relations for millennia. The murder of one diplomat had awakened humanity's true potential and reshaped known space according to human principles of organization and governance. The galaxy would never again underestimate the species that preferred negotiation, but possessed the capability for total war.